In this video, before you write even a single selector or style, we're going to take a little bit of time to set up Webpack to work with our styles files. So could we go ahead and create a raw CSS file and load it in via a link tag and index.html? Sure. But we're going to be taking advantage of a preprocessor. We'll be using SCSS. This is going to add support for things like variables, mixins, and other great features that make writing your styles a whole lot easier. So in this video, we're going to set up the process of configuring Webpack to take that SCSS, compile it down to CSS, and then add it into the application. Now to get that done, we'll be installing a few tools and we'll also be writing a few styles. So let's go ahead and actually kick things off by creating a new file and folder in the source directory. Right here, we're going to make a new folder called styles right inside of source. And in styles, we're going to add a single file for the moment. This is going to be styles.css, not SCSS. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And for now, all we're going to do is use the universal selector to select everything on the page, and we're going to set everything's color to red. Obviously, this is going to look terrible, but it is going to allow us to easily tell when the styles are actually being applied. So now the goal is to just get everything showing up as red by configuring Webpack. I'm going to close down all of the component files, and I'm going to go ahead and crack open Webpack. So far, we've only used Webpack to work with our JavaScript files, but we can also use Webpack to work with our styles files, whether it's SCSS, less, or regular old CSS. Now to do that, we have to start by specifying a new rule. Here, for example, we specify a rule that tells Webpack to run Babel whenever it encounters a JS file. What we need to do is run some stuff whenever Webpack encounters a styles file. So we're going to be setting up a new rule right here after our existing one. I'm going to toss on a comma, adding a second object to the rules array, and we're going to start off with the test. So previously, we used the test to target all files that end in .js. Here, we're going to use a test to target all files that end in .css. So / to escape the dot character, then CSS, and we want to make sure the file ends with that, so I will put a $sign at the end. This is saying we're looking for any file that ends with .css, which would indeed be styles.css. Now, this alone is not going to be enough to actually get things working, but we do have our test in place. Now we can specify our loader, and we're actually going to be using two to get started. So let's go ahead and pull those up real quick before we actually add them. I'm going to head over to npmjs.com. And the basic URL for finding a package is just / package / the package name. The first one we're going to be using is the CSS loader. So this is going to allow Webpack to actually load in our CSS assets. It is going to teach it how to take CSS and convert it into a JavaScript representation of that CSS, which is going to be important. Now, we're not only going to use this, we're also going to be using one more loader. This is the style loader. The style loader, it takes that CSS that's in JavaScript and it actually adds it to the DOM by injecting a style tag that will actually get our styles showing up in the browser. And in our case, every single piece of content is just going to be red. So let's go ahead and install both of these and configure them. We're going to do that over in the terminal. I'll shut down the build and clear the output. And we're going to be using yarn add to add two things locally. First up will be the style loader. And we'll grab the most recent version that's at 0.18.2. Then we're going to grab the CSS loader, and that is at 0.28.4. Now, once we install both of these, we can actually set them up inside of that rule. So we want to make sure that both of these run, and the end result is going to be our styles showing up in the browser. Now that everything is installed, I am just going to clear the output. And I'm not going to run the Webpack build just yet, since we're going to be changing it in a moment and we'll need to restart it anyways. So let's go ahead and finish off the changes first. Now up above, we specified loader, which allowed us to set up a single loader, and that is what we needed in this example. We just needed to run Babel. But for our CSS files, we need to run both of those loaders. So instead, what we're going to be doing is specifying use. Use allows us to provide an array of loaders. So we're going to go ahead and do just that right here. I'll set up the array. And the first one we're going to use is style loader. So in quotes, style loader. And the second one we're going to use is the CSS loader. And there we have it. This is all it takes to set up CSS inside of Webpack. The end result is that whenever Webpack encounters a CSS file, it is going to read that file in, and it's going to dump its contents into the DOM in a style tag. And the end result will be our styles showing up. So I'm going to save webpack config.js, and now we can go ahead and actually restart our build. Yarn run dev server. Now we haven't done anything to load that new file in, our CSS file. So if we do head into the browser, we're going to see no changes. Nothing's read just yet. But we now have everything set up to actually make things read. To do that, we're going to go ahead and add a single line into app.js. Inside of app.js, we want to load all of our styles in. That's going to get them inside of style tags in the DOM. To do that, we're just going to use import like we would for a JavaScript file. And remember, we just taught Webpack how to work with CSS files, so when it sees this, it's going to know exactly what to do. Now, we don't need to grab anything off of this, so we're just going to use import right to the file path. There's no need for some sort of default or named export, and there's no need for from. We are importing // The thing we're importing is in the styles folder, and it's called styles.css. I'm going to go ahead and save app.js. The program is going to restart, and the end result is everything is red. So there we have it. We were able to set up Webpack to work with our CSS file. Now at this point, we could go ahead and style the entire application using regular CSS, but that's not what we're going to do. What I'd like to focus on next is setting up SCSS. Before we do though, I know it can be really weird to see an import for a CSS file. And if you're a performance person, you're probably wondering what's going on behind the scenes. Is it really waiting until JavaScript runs to set up our styles? If so, that seems horribly inefficient. And it's true. Currently, that is what's happening, but we'll be outputting a separate CSS file a little later in the section, so just hang with me for the moment. The goal now is to not worry about that. The goal is to set up SCSS. We want to figure out how we can use it and how we can teach Webpack to compile SCSS down to regular CSS. So this is just like compiling JSX down into regular JavaScript. The browser doesn't understand the SCSS syntax, but it does understand CSS, and someone wrote a tool to convert from one to the other. The tool that we're going to be using, more like the language that we're going to be using, can be found at sasslang.com. If you've used it before, great. If not, that's awesome too. If you go over to learn Sass variables, this is the feature that we're going to be starting with. And the reason I'm bringing you here is to talk about one thing. You're going to hear me say SCSS and Sass a lot. They both come from the exact same tool. They're just different ways to write your code. So with SCSS, we use semicolons and we use curly braces. With Sass, we leave off semicolons and curly braces. That's basically it. We're going to be using SCSS throughout the course. Now to actually set things up, once again, we do have to install some new tools. We're going to be installing two tools and using them. The first one is going to be a new loader. This is going to be a loader that says, hey, when you encounter an SCSS file, go ahead and compile it. And the other thing is going to be the compiler itself, much like we installed Babel Loader and Babel Core. We're going to be doing the exact same thing for SCSS. So let's go ahead and get that done. The first step is going to be to tweak our test case. No longer are we going to look for regular CSS files. We're going to be looking for SCSS files. So I'm going to toss an S right there. We're also going to go ahead and tweak this file to actually use a feature of SCSS. Down below, I'm going to start by renaming it to styles.scss. That is going to add support for all of those features in terms of syntax highlighting. And right here, we're going to create a variable, $ followed by the variable name. I'll just call this one something simple like brand color. And we will set this equal to red for the moment. Actually, let's switch it up so we can make sure that things are changing. Blue. Now we have this variable and we're going to go ahead and use it right here. So instead of looking for the color red, we are going to set color equal to whatever brand color happens to be. And the great thing about this is we can use brand color throughout the styles sheet. And if we ever want to change the brand color, we just change it in one place up above. Now at this point, if we were to actually try to load in the SCSS file, things would fail. This is equivalent to trying to use JSX without running it through Babel. The browser does not understand this syntax. You need to do something to it to convert it down into something the browser does understand. Over inside of Indecision app, you can see we're getting a bunch of errors right here. You may need to add an appropriate loader to handle this file type. The warning is right on point. This is exactly what we need to do in order to get things working. So let's go ahead and switch into the terminal and install two new tools. One is going to be equivalent to Babel Loader. One is going to be equivalent to Babel Core. I'm going to clear the terminal output, and we're going to use yarn add for the last time in this video. First up is the SAS loader. This is going to allow us to actually import those SAS files at 6.0.6, and the other one is going to be node-SAS. This is what actually takes our SAS or SCSS code and converts it into regular CSS. The version we're going to be using is the most recent one, as always, 4.5.3. Let's go ahead and install both of these. Once they are installed, we're going to be able to use them inside of Webpack to get everything done. And that's going to be a very easy process. All we need to do is add a new loader on to use right here. The new item is going to be the SAS loader. And there we have it. We are all done. Behind the scenes, the SAS loader is going to use node.sas to convert the file. All we have to do is actually run Webpack. I'm going to switch back to the terminal, rerun yarn run dev server. Then, once it starts up, I'm going to go ahead and switch into the Chrome browser, refresh the page since we had a bunch of errors that crashed the application. And right here, we can see we are getting blue text, which means that our SCSS is correctly getting compiled into CSS, and it is indeed being applied to the page. Now we have access to the full power of SCSS. It's a fantastic tool. It's going to make it really easy to create good styles and to organize our styles. We're going to be able to break them up into multiple files, staying nice and organized, just like we did with our React components. That's it for this video. Let's take a quick moment to recap. In the beginning of this video, if we tried to load an SCSS file in, Webpack would have crashed. It would have tried to load the file. It would have saw that it's not JavaScript, and it would have outputted an error to the console. And that is exactly what we saw. So how did we fix this? We told Webpack exactly what to do when it encounters an SCSS file. We did that by specifying a new rule with a test for those SCSS files, and then we just use these three loaders. That allows us to get the code, convert it from SCSS down to CSS, and finally get it showing up in the browser by dumping it into a style tag. And if we look over here in the Elements panel, we can actually look at that style tag. Inside of the head of the document, right here we have a style, and right here you can see our code. Now you'll notice that the variable is gone. It's just the regular color blue. This is the raw CSS that ends up as the output. As I mentioned, later in the course, we're going to learn how to set up Webpack for production, and we'll explore how we can create a separate styles file. For now, though, what we're going to do in the rest of the videos is just start cranking out some styles for the Indecision application. I'm real excited to get to that, so I'll see you in the next video.